Happy New Year, gamers! It's almost time for Counter-Strike to get started in 2025. Well, it's a whole new era for the professional scene. Blast Bounty Season 1 is in a few days, and a lot of new signings will be debuting for their respective teams after Rostermania. And I thought it'd be fun to have a quick chat about some of them. There are, of course, plenty that sort of go without saying and have been discussed a lot. So I think Elige to FaZe, I absolutely love. Him playing with Rain, two of the most sort of storied and consistent riflers ever in CSGO/CS2. You've got Rups to Vitality, who feel like should fit like a glove. You've got Heavy God to G2, which is super fun. And of course, you've got the Heroic and Falcon swap, and VP moving past the J era with Flamus and Icy. But sort of everyone here is super known quantities as players. So I'm going to be focusing on some more of the unknown stars that some of the lower ranked teams have chosen. And that, of course, will be appearing in this new era of Valve ranking Counter-Strike, which you'll likely see, of course, in a couple of upcoming tournaments like Kata as well, not just Blast. But let's get into this right now and have a quick chat about some of these. So, as you can see, I've got quite a lot of tabs open. Problem, of course, right now is that there aren't many rosters that have actually completed their lineup. There's a lot that have yet to be done. As I said, with ROP, that's pretty much a given. I think G2 Heavy God's pretty much a given. And FaZe Legion's pretty much a given as well. But as I said, I touched on those. I'll quickly touch, firstly, as I said, I'll be focusing more on the more sort of unknown players that are rumoured/confirmed to be playing. But first, I just want to say, I think for VP, there are big question marks about whether, Electronic can in-game lead to a high quality anymore. He's not Boomich, that's for sure. I feel like Boomich has learnt a lot more from the sort of the era that he had with Blade than he did with anything else. I know Electronic hasn't necessarily proved himself as an IGL as much, but Flamus and Icy, I think it's probably the two best choices you could have possibly made here. Game Legion have again probably got a pretty good deal with VP buying him out. I think he brings a bit of fire and passion to the VP team, and Icy is definitely improved a lot as an individual. Still only very young, of course, only 19. At the Shanghai Major, I think he showed even though the Clan didn't do great, there are signs. There are signs that even in maybe what could be classed as a slightly dysfunctional team, he looked pretty good. So that's good to see for them. But I'm going to quickly go on to what is going to likely be Heroic's team first. Again, this is one that's not been confirmed, but this is an article that came out today on the day of recording. They're taking Sangal's core. Now, I'm not necessarily sure how I feel about, Sangal being technically completely destroyed by the combination of Falcons taking Heroic and Heroic having to take Sangal. But that's the reality we live in Valve ranking Counter-Strike, having to take the cores, right? And I think, honestly, you've probably done the best you could possibly have done here, just like Falcons have kind of done with the Heroic core. Adding Nico and Magisk, you technically get 2 upgrades there. I think Heroic have kind of upgraded Sangal as well. I mean, Sunpius is obviously a lot better than Samey. And I think Nilo as well. He's been, spoken about in the Swedish scene for so long. And he deserves this opportunity. I mean, he's, ever since he broke through on Medisport towards sort of the early part of 2024, when he obviously played a number of big qualifiers, he really made a name for himself. And I think he technically, I feel like he's still continuing to do that. If you look at recent results, it's not actually looking too amazing. But Medisport are probably one of the teams this year, I would say, alongside maybe the likes of Saw, which I'll get onto later, who have made quite a few questionable roster moves. And I think it's good for Nilo that he'll be able to get out of there and get into a team under under Saw's coaching as well. I think it's going to be really good. Youngster's a really good role player. Linus, I think, is a very underrated in-game leader. But we know that Sangal crashed out of the RMR for Shanghai when they were sort of everyone's tier 2 favourite, including mine. That's obviously a little bit worrying. But you have 2, I would say, upgrades here. I mean, obviously, you've lost Jota, who I'll get onto in a second. But, Nilo's excellent, deserves the upgrade. Sunpius might have to do a little bit of carrying, I feel like. I think, your firepower really is between Sunpius and Nilo here. Sure, Xfloud has been very good as sort of the duo alongside Jota in that Sangal team. But it remains to be seen, of course, how he'll work on Heroic. Now, the first one that's actually been confirmed, of course, that's FlyQuest Regali. And I quite like this one. I spoke a little bit about it on a podcast with Neokai and Jordan, Elfish Guy. Obviously, as a, removing Alistair felt like it was kind of a long time coming. Even though he was improving a little bit of late. Now, the thing with Regali is there are question marks, I think, here. In terms of what's actually going to be his level. Because his Copenhagen Flames level was fantastic. I adored what I saw from Copenhagen Flames. I think he was the best player in Tier 2 in that era under the Bird from Sky Copenhagen Flames. Then he went to OG, and he was a good CT AWPer, but maybe a bit too overly defensive T AWPer. Gave me sort of like, head trick NIP vibes. Felt like he wasn't really getting into the action when he maybe could or should have. And then, of course, the Entropic project kind of, happened, then stopped happening within a few months as they decided they didn't want to continue to be an org, basically, in Counter-Strike, with how Valve ranking Counter-Strike is going to work. But I think of all the options that FlyQuest could have probably gone for, I think this is probably the best they could have chosen. Don't be deceived by the 1.46. It's a couple of matches here that you can see that against lower tier opposition in more recent times. But that's, again, why I feel like Regali is a bit of a question mark. Big fan of his. Big fan of his. Can he do it on FlyQuest? Now, of course, FlyQuest are going to get themselves into a lot of these events thanks to their Valve ranking. That remains to be seen, but I'm a fan. I think he'll look okay. Jota, I think, is an absolute slam dunk for Eternal Fire. This one is one that I think should be absolutely sort of revered in terms of how it makes Eternal Fire a little bit scarier. Calyx was a bit more of the inconsistent / role player / if he has a good game, maybe it's because Xantaras and Wakadia aren't having a good game sort of player. And I think Jota has proved himself, not just in the stint he had with Sangal last year. Of course, they won back-to-back Challenger Leagues. Sangal looked incredible in Tier 2. The Shanghai Major RMR, we all know it's the big failure of theirs. But if he was still under your banner, obviously having previously been in Eternal Fire Academy, just being on loan to Sangal, this was just a no-brainer to bring him back for the new season. I think it makes Eternal Fire a little bit scarier. I think it could mean they are an upset team for even maybe as high up as like a Vitality or a Mal's or even a FaZe. I think they have the ability to fight with these guys. Maybe not Navi G2 Spirit, but they've got some serious firepower here now. I'm really looking forward to seeing how that will revamp them. Now to some a bit more unknown ones, I suppose. Let's look at Bait. Now, Bait have moved past Captain Kurtka, which is a little bit of a shame. Captain Kurtka is a bit of a goat for Bait. He's been around that team since kind of the very beginning. And now they're moving past him and going with Kenzizor. And now Kenzizor's a bit of he's a known quantity and also an unknown quantity. As you can see, even though he's only 18, he's been on a lot of teams in the past. I think I first covered him actually on his first team at Iron Branch when they were playing in quite a lot of qualifiers online that I used to cover on my stream, and I still occasionally do. Obviously tried a little bit in ICLA, then the UA ICLA, and then most recently he's been a part of Kono. And Kono, I think, is an interesting team because they, one of the grinders in sort of Tier 3, Tier 2, alongside like a number of other Ukrainian teams. I think there's there you go, they're actually popping up on the list here, but that was a stroke of luck. The likes of like TNL and LNG as well. I think if you look, there's actually quite a lot of Ukrainian talent out there at the moment. If you look at the LNG team, you look at the Kono team, there's actually some good players to look for here. The Kono team was mostly the old esports club Kyiv roster. You'll remember Saltovsky, S4. You remember Amster, Buria as well. But yeah, I think this is actually a really cool choice. This makes Bait an even younger team, of course, than they were before, because Essentia was already incredibly young when he joined. Their average age, as you can see, only 20 now. But again, they were a disappointment. I sort of put Bait and Sangal in almost the same bracket when it came to the Shanghai RMR, with how good I thought they were looking over the course of the year online and occasionally in a few LAN games. But they fell off, and MPL wasn't as impactful as an in-game leader, even though he's shown his individual form online as an IGL and a fragger. And Alex, even though he's been superb online, was a little bit slower as well. I think this gives him a little bit of extra firepower without Captain Kurtka now. Kenzazor, of course, has only proved himself in this sort of tier 2, tier 3, more sort of tier 2.5 if you want to go that far. But I think it's actually an even more exciting team now with Kenzazor than it was with Captain Kurtka. Headtrick's been a consistent force kind of in tier 2 all year. Essential was really bad at the beginning of his time on bait. He's now growing into his role and learning what it takes to be a sort of player at this level. So, considering Blast Bounty is online, I have a little bit of hope that Bait could do something in this event. Could be a bit of a dark horse for some of the teams maybe that have stood still, for example, like 3D Max, maybe like Wildcard perhaps. I think obviously M80 having to play with Keto, for example, I think they could easily take them. So that's an exciting one for me. Now, one that I think that probably won't change the fortunes of their team, but at least is an interesting pickup, is the two changes that Fluxo have made. They've picked up Pyria Jr. and History. History has history on Fluxo previously. I still, even though like he kind of farms tier 2 South America when he was on that hype roster, covered him in South America a few times in some CCTs and ESL Challenger League stuff. I still think I would have preferred Zevi, and maybe that's a name value thing, I don't know, in my own mind, but I don't think it's a groundbreaking decision to bring him back. I think Pyria is a good choice, though. Don't get me wrong, I don't think Fluxo are going to do anything too special in this tournament, but Pyria has been sort of floating around in sort of tier 2 South America for a really long time now. As you can see, Bounty Hunters, he's been on Fluxo in the past for a little bit. He kind of really shot into the limelight, I think, when he was mostly on Fury Academy, when he played a couple of the Academy Leagues. And I think he's now grown into a really good player in the sort of tier 2 level, but doing it against the teams they're going to be facing here remains to be seen. However, I really like this decision, and I'll be actually quite excited to see how he does, because it's one of those players that you watch him play in Tier 2 South America, you think, okay, this guy's actually a bit of a cut above here. He could definitely get upgraded. He has, to a team that will play some of the best teams in the world in these events. Remains to be seen if that will, if he can keep up his level, and Fluxo can just sort of help advance his career. One more here that has been confirmed already. Then we have to go on to some other roster moves that won't be confirmed. SHR. Now, Saw, don't get me wrong, they have made some very, very, very questionable roster changes this year. I mean, losing U-Jerks and Arosdos in clearly going by like social media posts and stuff, kind of weird circumstances, excuse me, was definitely a problem. And probably put them at top of my list alongside Medisport, like I said, maybe as two teams that made kind of the worst roster move decisions in the entire calendar year. But still, when they brought Agile in, guess what? They still won an ESL Challenger. Was that honeymoon period post-roster change? I don't know. Obviously, that was still with, only one change. This is two changes. SHR, I do like what Saw are doing in terms of sticking with Portuguese talent, at least. They haven't broken away from that. And he actually is one of the more promising players in sort of the Iberian scene. I've seen 1 or 2 games from him on GTZ. As you can see, there's not really much to work with here. It's basically October, November. But as you can see, there's a reason why Saw have been like, oh shit, this guy is, this guy's maybe one to watch in the Iberian scene, because, Rhino were kind of that team for a little while that had the players that, Saw would look to pick up. Now it's GTZ, and, Koi, we know Koi were a mess at the end of their run, but he farmed Koi, he's farmed Rhino, what's that? 7 times over, pretty much. I think this is actually a pretty cool pickup for Saw, and a pickup that might keep them relevant enough to stick around the likes of Complexity, 3D Max, MIBR, Pain maybe. There's actually a world here where this is a really shrewd move, and it just depends now if he can continue that form outside of Iberia and do it again on the bigger level. I think this is actually not a bad move at all. And I actually still quite heavily trust in the sort of the Materis Roman story core. We know Roman's not a stunning player in the modern era, but he's a good role player. And Materis, I think, is the best player to learn from if you're Agile and especially SHR. So I don't dislike it. I hope it keeps him relevant. Now, as I said, some roster moves here, but haven't actually been confirmed yet and only rumoured. This one is more of a sort of set in stone one, I think, that just hasn't really been announced yet. That's Davideus for Pain. They removed Lux. And while Lux, I think, was amazing online, on LAN he did fall off a little bit. And for the level that Pain are at now, as a top 15 team in the world, I think they are, looking to make some more blockbuster moves. Davideus may be looking at it and saying, oh, that's not a blockbuster South American player, really. But what I really am interested to see here is how Davideus looks under Big Azera. I think this could be the best move in Rostermania in South America. There have been a lot of sort of like middling, sort of sideways moves, I feel like, in South American Counter-Strike during Rostermania. I don't think Davideus is one of those. I really, really like this. And we know Red Cannons were a little bit dysfunctional when the pressure got high during the RMR. They didn't look too great. Sure, Davideus fell off a little bit individually as well. But I think that comes with the pressure, maybe the environment under Red Cannons and that team they had, which I just didn't feel like knew what they wanted to do in the important moments. They felt a bit lost when it really came to the nitty-gritty. And this is why I think that Davideus could be a really, really good pickup for Pain. Especially under Big Azera. He's a very, very talented player. I've watched him since his very beginning of his career, back to sort of like even some of these teams here, and especially Paqueta. I'll always remember a Paqueta game I casted of his for a DreamHack South America qualifier, where he was like, I think he dropped like 68 kills in a triple overtime game. It was absolutely ridiculous. So yeah, I think this is a really good move if it comes to pass, and I hope it does. Next one I quite want to quickly touch on is Complexity. This is one where, again, they're kind of like in a tough position. It's not a confirmed roster move yet, but I trust in Dust2 US and the report. 60's pretty cool. I've covered him quite a few times in North America. I think he deserves an opportunity like this. Nyx is more of the gamble. I really do appreciate Complexity staying North American and keeping a core and going for some lesser talent in North America. But to cut to the chase with this one, losing a Liege is going to hurt them badly. And I think this kind of puts them more into the grasp of like a FlyQuest and a Big now. And I think they'll be overtaken by these sort of teams at this point. I think they're at risk of like a Bait. They're at risk of a Big, especially with their possible roster moves, which I'll get onto in a second. So we shall see. Now, here's one again that's only been a very quiet rumor. I've seen very, very few things about Gamer Legion, but we know how shrewd Ash is with his pickups. I've seen one rumor, which is from I think a guy called Gromov on Twitter or something, one of these insiders. I'm sure he got decent information. This was a possibility, but this is a bit of a stab in the dark. I have no idea if this is going to be a move that Gamer Legion are going to go for, but it's the only thing I can go off for now. And considering I can go off of it, I wanted just to talk about him. And I think Casello, Zelo, however you want to pronounce his name, I think Casello rolls off the tongue pretty nicely. It's what my co-caster Hayes says. I'll stick with it. He's been unbelievable in Gun 5 in 2024. I mean, you just have to look at some of his numbers. Like, you'll see some red numbers here, sure. But look at this little streak of green. And this is against good Tier 2 opposition, right? You've got Z10, 9, Sashi... Gamer Legion again, actually, even though they just smashed them. So even though that was not a great KD, he contributed to an amazing win. He's been probably him and Tania on that Gun 5 team. Gun 5 are a little bit of a questionable team with how they can lose random games and then win random games, I feel like sometimes. But one thing that's not questionable is how good Casello and how good Tania have been on Gun 5. And Casello is probably the better gamble. We know Game Legion, focus on the younger talent. I think this is a great choice if they go for him. I think he's almost the next Flammus in a way. I mean, it sounds a bit strange to say that. But if you're losing Flammus, maybe you're getting someone a little bit more similar to him again. I think it's a really cool move. I do question how Game Legion will look with Torsten still, even though they looked amazing at the Major and he did his role pretty well. I just don't think Torsten maybe is up to scratch at sort of Tier 1.5, Tier 1 level. But if they do go for Casello, I think it's a cool move. Now, again, I'm going to have to just go off of reports for this one, but the thought process, I think, behind what Big's plans are going to be bringing Hyped back off the bench and taking QUB. I've liked Hyped. I think he was great on alternate attacks. I think he's done some great work in Tier 2. I still question whether maybe this is a bit of a side grade from Searson. Searson kind of upped his game a little bit. Maybe they want someone a little bit more, a bit more oomph, a bit more aggression. Someone better on a rifle. Searson's never been one to be a good rifler. We all know that. He's a better scouter than he is rifler. But I still feel like maybe it's a bit more of a side grade than it is an upgrade. But I will be really interested to see how he does, because I do like Hyped quite a bit. Obviously, he's been around the big academy and big setup for a very, very long time. If they do take Kyubi, this is one player that hasn't been in the big academy setup at all, and he's only still 19. People have kind of forgotten about this guy, I feel like, because he's been benched on Fnatic for so long. He was a really, really solid part of this Sangal team alongside Soulfly, I think it was at the time. I think it was the Skrunk Soulfly team. He was really, really solid, and I like him quite a lot. Unfortunately, I feel like Fnatic came a little bit too soon for him, and in the roles he was in, he just sort of struggled to keep numbers up, and it was really Mattis who took that sort of mantle by the scruff of the neck on Fnatic, and not really Kyubi. But if Big do go for Kyubi, I think that's actually a really cool decision. It gives him a chance to learn under Big, and you've still got the Tabson, JDC, Crimbo, Core, for him to learn off of, and I think that's actually a pretty cool move. Now, I just want to touch on a couple more that obviously sort of haven't happened yet. We don't know what the wildcard invite is going to be just yet. I've seen absolutely no rumours whatsoever about what 9 Pandas +2 is going to be, but a Shalfie Dilladez Result core should entice a couple of talented players to join 9 Pandas, I would think. I've seen nothing to confirm yet. Maybe that when this video comes out, there will be a confirmed team. But yeah, if they get a good +2, and there is a lot of good players out there in Tier 2 from Russia, we all know that they could be a very dangerous upset team. I'm looking forward to seeing how they do. And finally, a roster that hasn't made any changes ever since they won Espo, of course, but ENCE. I'm going off the thought process for ENCE here, because they're still a very new team. I just wanted to touch on them quickly at the end of this video. Because they've stuck together, and it's not a new project, like at the beginning of 2025, they actually won a LAN. Sure, their online results haven't been amazing, and this is online, so that means I maybe think they won't do too great. It's the fact they've stuck together, the fact that they've got probably two of the most, I guess you could say, slam dunk choices that were in Tier 2 last year, Ex-Kaspersky and Natu. These two players are brilliant. I mean, like, ENCE might be in a position again in the future to maybe sell a couple of these guys on, but right now I would say do your best to keep hold of them, because they are brilliant. And because they've stuck together, because they've had time to work together under Glaive and SDY and all that experience, again, it's online, which does concern me, but they could propel themselves in this event. I think they could get themselves up toward that sort of top 20 position rather than top 36, and I think there's a chance they could do something in this event. So definitely keep an eye on them. But for now, that's probably the summary over and done with. I hope I gave a few insights there that you guys are interested in. Really looking forward to this new era of Valve ranking Counter-Strike. We all know that people aren't necessarily happy with how the VRS is yet, but I'm sure over the course of the year it will either even out, or it will become there'll be an issue that's so obvious that Valve will change it. So we shall see. Apologies for my voice a little bit in this video. I'm still a little bit of a cold I'm getting over from Christmas. Somehow that's lasted about 2 weeks at this point. But I feel good now, and I'm really looking forward to going to the HLTV Awards in Serbia in a couple of days, which is why I'm getting this video out right now. But for now, so thank you very much for watching. Drop a like if you enjoyed it. Drop a sub as well. I'll be trying to do a lot more videos over the course of 2025, as I ended 2024 with a really good, nice little streak of videos, and I got some really nice reception for them as well. So much love, enjoy the tournaments upcoming, and we'll see you very soon.